on Natural State Sports, your top source for the biggest news in high school sports across Arkansas.
Here we go.
What is up, everybody? Thanks for joining us on episode 60 of Arkansas Preps Weekly here on the Natural State Sports Network. My name's Kyle Sutherland as we bring you another live show, the second one we've ever done, and we're doing it in consecutive weeks as the state tournament has wrapped up, and we are, well, I guess at least the state tournament sites, and now we're into the state finals that are going to be played, all 12 games, of course, at Bank OZK Arena in Hot Springs. And for that, to break it all down, we're going to bring in our man, Erick Taylor, back for the third time this year, I guess it is, Erick. So always happy to be joined by, I know you spent a long week in Paragould on the campus of Greene County Tech. I was actually there on Friday for the second half of the day. Got called out of the bullpen to go call the Maumelle Hot Springs game for the Maumelle Sports Network. But what was it, 100? What do we play, about 172 combined games? I think it is, something like that. It's over 150 between between girls and boys. It is around 100. I think I counted it. It's about 172-ish. So it's a lot. And, you know, I know you didn't do just the 5A games. You did a lot of the roundups and everything like that. So really excited about this, though. We got some great matchups. And one thing, Erick, that I noticed that I've seen point out a couple of times, there are a lot of Bulldogs. I think about half the teams are Bulldogs between Earl, Tuckerman, Springdale, Fayetteville. Yeah. So a lot of Bulldogs and a lot of good matchups.
There'll be a lot of Bulldogs down in Hot Springs, man. But you just hit the nail, man. It's going to be a lot of good matchups. I know a lot of people are surprised at some of the matchups, as are we on some. But then again, you know, a lot of them I'm not surprised to see, you know, some teams get to that point, man. But we'll discuss that here in a second.
Well, we'll go ahead and we'll get right into it. Actually, before we do, though, I want to remind everybody that comes on, if you will subscribe to either YouTube, if you prefer to watch. I know many would probably prefer to listen to the audio, so you don't have to look at me every week. But we're on Apple, iHeartRadio, Spotify, iHeart, just any of those that I might have said iHeart twice, but any of those that you listen to audio versions, we are there as well. Also want to welcome you to get into the comments section. I'll try to keep an eye on those. Tap in. We're going to discuss 6A all the way down to 1A, of course, in both classifications, obviously. So we had some good interaction last week. Just hop in if you so please. But that being said, let's go ahead and hop right into it. Don't start with 1A. I want to start with 6A girls. So as I mentioned last week, the format for these is we usually start in the highest classification, then we work our way down. So we'll start with the girls here. And Erick, I mentioned this on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. You hit the nail right on the head with particularly the 6A West last week, because the burning question coming into this season, throughout the season, was, will the Central be overtaken? And not only was there only one whereas we've had four teams from the Central representing in the semifinals the last two seasons, we only had one this year, being North Little Rock. And probably now you did mention to watch out for all of those West teams pretty much. Of course, you look at Bentonville, you look at Fayetteville, and then, of course, Springdale, Fort Smith Northside, getting my stuff tied up here. 3 to 5 seeds are all made it to the semifinals. And then, of course, you've got Fayetteville that's playing Northside. So both of these teams were expected to be really good this year. Northside, I mean, Ricky Smith every single year, he's 800 wins as a coach. What is this like as a 12th state championship he's been to? Vic Rimmer's also a pretty dang good coach too at Fayetteville. He's had a great career. But has a really young team, both Bentonville and Fayetteville. I think many kind of thought that they were maybe about a year or so away from really doing some damage, but both proved just about everybody wrong, maybe outside of the Northwest pocket there. And now we've got an all-West matchup, I guess, since 2021, the last time these two teams, Fayetteville and Northside, faced off against each other, and it went to 2 overtimes.
You know, I've said pretty much all year that, you know, I thought the West from top to bottom was better than the Central this year. You know, Central, of course, you got Conway and Central, the defending state champ. And then North Little Rock, of course, every year is going to be right there as well. But I always thought that, you know, from 1 through at least that top 5 in the West, you know, was almost interchangeable on any given night. I mean, you had so many close games between those teams. And, you know, when state tournament hit, you know, the first game, of course, that jumped out a lot of people was that Fayetteville Conway game. I guess the second round game is what it was. And Fayetteville pulled that out in overtime. And of course, when you knock off a top seed, it's an upset. But at the same time, Fayetteville has never been a slouch at all. And I guarantee you, Coach Hutchcraft would have been the first to tell you that going into that game, man, and they pulled it off. So I was, didn't necessarily expect Conway to lose that one, but at the same time, I'm not shocked to see Fayetteville win because how good that conference was this year. The same thing with Bentonville. You go in and you knock off the conference champ, by double digits in the second round game as well. But again, that just shows you the depth and the strength of the West this year. Like the North Side is North Side. They're always North Side. Every year they're going to be a threat to get to the state finals, especially as long as Ricky Smith is there. And then who knows, whenever he decides to hang him up, his successor will probably keep that train rolling, man. So the West really flexed their muscle, man, in state tournament this past week, man.
Yeah, they really did. There's no question about that. And as we know, that not only just because they're conference members, but just looking at Northside and Fayetteville overall, this is a team I would imagine out even before. I don't know how much Vic Rimmer and Ricky Smith faced each other like back when Rimmer was at Shiloh Christian and schools like that. But in conference play in 6A, I guess 7A some years, they have squared off a lot. And of course, playing each other twice in conference play each year. This year, Northside has the edge over Fayetteville. They've won both of those games. But I also that was kind of the thing. I didn't watch Northside, Eric, a whole lot until conference play. I did keep up with them a little bit in some of the non-conference tournaments and everything. I watched them against Douglas, if I'm not mistaken. That was one of their non-conference losses, Douglas, Oklahoma. But I will say for a long, I kept hearing from multiple people, I'm not sure what Northside has outside of Ariana Gooden. And Ariana Gooden's a great player. Don't get me wrong. She was on the team when they went the last time in 2022 as a freshman. But I mean, it's not just her, just kind of like with Fayetteville. Now, I feel like Northside's got a little bit more senior leadership. Now, you look at Whitney Brown. I know, I think Mariah Moss might be a senior. Is Mariah Moss a junior or senior? From Fayetteville. I think she's an upperclassman, if I'm not mistaken. But you've got.
Yeah, I don't want to misspeak.
Yeah.
I'd have to check that. But,
I know Whitney Brown, is a senior leader for them, but then you've also got Peyton Cottle, the freshman. You've got, of course, Sanaya Coachman was outstanding in this. Of course, and the big thing with them in the semifinal matchup was they hit their free throws. I mean, I think they were like 96%. Shooting from the free throw line. It was just exceptional. It was over 90%. I know that. So we know kind of the formula that they might use in state is to really just get one to the rack, try to get fouled, and then get to the line because they've proven that they can shoot those. But we always hear the cliche, Eric. Right now, I kind of feel like that this game is just it's kind of up in the air. I mean, I know that's the cop-out answer, but it's kind of one of those things where this game, to me, is wide open, just like the West was this year. I know you had Harbor in that mix. You had Springdale in that mix. You had Northside. That was kind of the top three teams for everybody. And as we talked about with Bentonville and Fayetteville, just trying to break through there. Mm-hmm. But I think that's kind of where this game is. You just don't know what you're going to get when these two face off against each other. Mm-hmm. Fayetteville or Northside does have the advantage 2-0 this season, but as we always say, and I think it's a very true cliche, it is really tough to beat a team 3 times.
I'd heard that phrase, just that phrase right there, probably 3 or 4 times doing the state tournament this past week, man. Because I mean, it sounds common and cliche, but it's true. And it's been proven to be true as well. You're going to have teams that win that third matchup, but then again, you may lose that first 2 and they have someone jump up and win that third one, man. But I guarantee you, Northside fans and Fayetteville fans are both going to agree that, they don't know who's going to win this game, just like, we don't, because this is a true, I think, toss-up game. But like you mentioned, kind of what the West was. Of course, you had Springdale winning it and Harbor right there. But a lot of those games were so close. Even if the spreads were 10, 12-point spreads, they were extremely close at some point early in the fourth quarter, and then before a team pulled off. And I'm really expecting this game right here to be tight all the way through, and until the last, few possessions of the fourth quarter. If I had to guess, I would imagine Fort Smith would be the favorite going in because they won those previous two. But again, man, Vic Rimmer has done just a heck of a job since he's been at Fayetteville, and what he's done this year. It reflects that, and he's going to go into that game. And I guarantee you, those ladies probably expect to win, and Northside does as well, which makes for a great game is what I think we're going to end up seeing.
No doubt. Then Class 5A, it went just about as we expected, Eric, and that was kind of where I had said many times, because that was one of the burning questions out of 5A, and we'll get to the boys here in a bit. But on the girls' side, this is going to be a very competitive competitive tournament. It's going to be some of the best games, and we certainly had plenty of great games. We had a lot of those big-time performances, the whole 9 yards, but Farmington did what Farmington did. Now, you really got to tip your hat to Jeremy Simon and Bologna. I think that that's a game that they're going to look at. Of course, Farmington's only lost one. It was to a great out-of-state opponent, but that's going to be one they look back on, and they're going to remember that one just because, Bologna, you've got to play a perfect game. The guys on the Bologna broadcast said it. It's so true. You've got to play a perfect game to beat these Farmington Lady Cardinals. You just do. And Bologna dang near just about did it. Now, of course, they were anytime Easton McCullough got the ball, it was just, they were on her like white on rice. It was just, they were all over her because of what she put up 34 in the first half of the opening game, then 25 against Benton. So, and she was their leading scorer. So they knew who they were going to get the ball to, but then they started feeding inside. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I was going back and forth because me, I got 4 or 5 screens going. I think Casey McCumber got in some early foul trouble. She got in like 2 fouls. You would know more than me because you were there, but once she came back, they really started feeding it inside to her and Zoe Shears. And that's what makes this Farmington team so incredibly dangerous, is the fact that if Easton's not getting her points, which just about every single game she does, then they're going to feed it inside to some more studs that they have. They've got Morgan Ure was another that came off the bench that did a great job, particularly in that Benton game. Of course, everybody got to play in the Benton game because it was, by halftime, it was pretty lopsided, but that's that. Bologna really showed, I think, what you have to do. It's just a matter of, can you do that the entire game? And you really have to credit these Lady Eagles. Sydney Middleton, that's one we're really going to miss. I know you and I have gotten to see a lot of her, with her being a local kid starter since freshman year. Great performance by her. Now, I think it always throws me off with twins. Was it Brooklyn that was, or was it Brianna that was on Easton?
I believe Brooklyn, was on
one of the Burnham twins and did a phenomenal job. Did a great job on her, and another youngster that we're going to get a chance to see. But Eric, I can't go against Farmington until someone proves otherwise. We saw that Farmington got up on, or that Bologna got up on them, and Greene County Tech. Look, they were the home team. They played some close games and came out on top. Of course, BB gave them all they wanted. Mountain Home, I think that first quarter, even though that they were in it after a really bad first quarter, they still stuck with it. But then Greene County Tech pulled away at the end. But that's one thing, and I touched on it on here last week. Jason Smith has talked about, you can't go into this game. You talked about how a lot of teams have been beaten before the starting 5 has been even announced, because they know how good this team is and they're too worried about what Farmington is going to do. TCT's got to come in and they have to just play their game like Bologna did. It's just a matter of, can you play perfect essentially for that full entire four quarters?
Before the Bologna and Farmington played, I was talking to Nick Wanger, and he asked me, if I thought Bologna had a chance. And I told him I thought they did. I thought they would have to play an almost perfect game. And I figured, and I told them this, that they would probably put one of the Burnham twins on Easton, and she'll basically get shadowed. So I didn't really expect her to put up real big numbers, because like those twins, when I tell you their motor is like here, they never stop, and Coach Johnson and Farmington ran a lot of sets to try to get Easton open on screens, running off screens. And she does she does nothing that constitutes a freshman. The way she works the screens, the way she comes off the screens, when she gets the ball in her hand, she always makes the right read. But she was literally in her hip pocket from the time the ball was tipped. So it was one of those games. And the deal with that is that when you try to take her away, Farmington is so deep with scoring. Marion Adams, who I think, is one of the best players in Arkansas that you never really hear about. She's been doing it for so long. She's college ready right now. I've always said that. You got her who handles a lot of the ball duties. Then you got the two 6-footers inside with Casey and Zoe. When you're 6'1" and above on the interior, that's tough to defend, but at the same time, Bologna came out and shot it well that first half. Kim Henry came out, I think she had 4 threes in the first half, if I'm not mistaken. She came out shooting well. Sydney did what she did. Maddie Mannion made some shots, and they were up, I think, 6 at the half, and we're still up 6, in the second quarter in the third quarter before Farmington started pounding in inside to Casey. I think Casey ended up with like 16 in the second half. Zoe was pounded in inside, and Bologna just didn't have the size to deal with that, and it kind of wore them down, I think, a little bit. And although they were still in it, early in the fourth, Sydney did everything she could to keep those ladies there, man. They really played a really good game, but Farmington just so tough, man. You can try to take 1-2 guys away, the girls away, and you have another wave. Morgan, you are shot well all tournament long, and they're just tough to defend. I mean, they got so many different options, man. And then for Greene County, and by the way, great crowds throughout the whole week at Greene County. Like you saw that in the game, the Maumelle game, but it was just packed every day. It was times where I'm literally sitting beside, Kayla Fletcher and the whole week, and we could barely hear each other speak because it was so loud. They're just a great crowd there. Greene County Tech, they can't afford to get off to a slow start. And that number one, because you get off to a slow start and you get snowed under, that game will be over within the first 6 minutes of the first quarter. And Bologna avoided that happening to them. They actually took it to Greenwood and defended well. So I think Greene County Tech has to come out and take it to them, which I think they will. Coach Smith does a great job with those ladies, man. They have to make shots, I think, too. So I mean, they're a live team in this game. Of course, Farmington is going to be favored to win it. They just like they've been favored to win pretty much every game they've played in this year, maybe with the exception of 1 or 2 over in that holiday tournament. But I don't think Greene County Tech is going to come in afraid. I don't think they're going to be beaten before the game begins like a lot of teams have with Farmington. They're going to be there, man. It's just going to depend on how they come out. They come out ready to play. And that's the thing. You can't show any fear. Take it to them and do what you do. They got you to this point.
Our man Dylan Connolly with some Mountain Home's finest with some expert analysis here. I agree with that. I mean, you can't disagree with it. So thank you, Dylan, for that.
He was spot on this week when he was saying that this week, man. Every game he won.
Yep, he is batting 1,000 right now. Literally. Talk about GCT, and we want to give Farmington their flowers because they have certainly earned it, but GCT right up there as well, because these are I really think, Eric, that since probably about mid-January, so basically about 2 months, these are the 2 best teams in 5A, and that's been proven. There's no question about it. Of course, Farmington, I think their win streak against in-state opponents is now up to 88, which is absolutely asinine. They're 17 overall. Now, they fell to Webb, Tennessee back on December 28th in that gauntlet of a tournament that they played. I remember Coach Johnson sent me a bunch of detail. I mean, it was just like college prospect after college prospect they were playing. And then GCT's 124 consecutive. Mm-hmm. So these are the 2. I mean, this is the best. And I really liked Bologna this year. Loved my Mountain Home. You and I both had Mountain Home ranked pretty much. And I mean, definitely a top 5A team all year. So I think that the best 4 teams were in the semifinals. And I think the best 2 teams are in the finals. So, I know that everybody and their mother probably thinks that maybe other than outside of Greene County, thinks that Farmington is going to win this game, but we have the 2 best teams in Class 5A that are squaring off, and certainly GCT reserves that respect as well. So on down, well, if I can find my notes here or my tabs, to 4A. So last week, Eric, I just basically touched on PA, DeQueen, and Nashville as kind of the big 3 because I've talked about them a lot this year. I know you have. So we kind of touched a little bit more on other teams. And, of course, the big stories coming into 4A was Brooklyn and the run that they were on, being a 4 seed, coming into regionals, being the only 4 seed to win a regional championship. Then they had a really good showing in the state tournament before falling to Nashville. Then you look at Mills, made it to the semifinals. I believe that's the first time in school history, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was. I know the record was about the best one in the past 2 decades. First ever regional championship. So and you touched on, you nailed it on the head last week about how Mills coming into conference play to the 2025 year record like Nashville's was a little misleading. Both played extremely tough schedules. And I mean, just the job that Coach Gregory and his staff did, especially with all they endured, was just phenomenal. So definitely want to tip our hats to them. I think that even though PA has been unbeaten all year, I mean, still is obviously, I think that I definitely underrated because all season I felt like Nashville was probably going to end up coming out on top of this. Not necessarily because of their non-conference schedule. Now Nashville was real banged up, so I am curious to see, and we'll never know what a fully healthy team could have done. But nonetheless, this is how it is. But PA, Eric, we knew they were good all year. But I mean, the Queen kind of the same way. Knew they were good all year. Both of these teams, though, really, especially in the semifinals, I felt like took it to another level. PA, we knew was going to be good. They were really good last year. You replace a great coach with another great coach and Coach Yarbrough. Now, if you, depending on which stream you listen to, you might have heard some fairly ignorant, actually very ignorant and extremely untrue comments regarding this PA team. All of them, except for maybe one, have played together since they were in elementary school. And this is a team that works just as hard as everybody else, that is as fundamentally sound as anybody in the state. Mm-hmm. So these girls deserve it as much as anybody. And they're not just undefeated because they played a chump schedule or anything like that. Again, I was probably one of the ones that not necessarily was hard on them, but it was more of, I felt like Nashville throughout the season, maybe up until the last like 2 or 3 weeks, was probably going to end up being the top dog. But even in their own conference, the Queen, Brett Burgess, what a job that he has done there. He brings in Shaylin and Jesse Loudman. And it wasn't just Shaylin and Jesse that they have on that team. They already had Landry Ligon. There was a couple of others in there. Emma Chambers. Emma Chambers is another. I was thinking, I know she's a junior. I couldn't think of her name for a second there. So the Queen, we knew after they went undefeated in non-conference play. Now, I did have some questions about their schedule, and not bashing it. I just kind of wanted to see them play the Nashvilles and get deep into the state tournament to see how good they really were. Mm-hmm. Well, we see how good they really are. They're in the state championship. And kind of back to what I was saying in Class 5A, I think that these are right now, especially between PA and DeQueen, the two best teams in the classification.
Oh, for sure. And I said, during the regional tournament that, when DeQueen and Nashville played in that final, I felt that the loser of that game would get to the state championship on that side of the bracket, because I know the winner was going to end up. I mean, the winner of that region was going to get to the state final, because I think the loser was going to end up probably playing PA, and in this case, Nashville ended up running to PA. But just to go back a minute about the Lady Bruins, man, I hate that the comments and that we heard about those ladies. I mean, it's unfortunate. Like I said, it's not true, and it kind of, takes away from what these ladies have done, in a sense, and they're not going to let it diminish them at all. But I just hate to hear things like that, man. It's unfortunate. But these ladies have been doing this all year long. When they made their run last year, and they brought basically all those ladies back, I knew this was going to be a year where, okay, this team has been together for a while. They know each other. They have chemistry. They're going to have what it takes to get there, and when they swept through what tournament was that? I think it was up Northeast. They ended up playing Valley View and teams like that. The way they went through that tournament, I was like, okay, this team is legit. And they've done that since then, and then played Nashville. Like I said, Nashville hasn't necessarily been healthy all year, but at the same time, you beat Nashville by 20. Then, I mean, that's saying something regardless of who's in that lineup, man. So they definitely earned that. The Queen the same way. Mills played them tough for a half. Yesterday in that other semifinal. I think it may have been a tie game or a 1-point game or something before the Queen went on this big run in the third quarter and kind of took control. But like these two teams have pretty much been 1-2 all year. PA's been 1 all year in 4A, and the Queen and Nashville has kind of flip-flopped at 2 and 3 spot. But like I said, we're getting the two best teams in 4A just like we are in 5A in the state final. And it should be a good one, man. Those Loud twins are tough, man. I've been watching the ladies for, I guess, probably since they were freshmen or whatnot. But they just carry on what they did in Nashville, and the same thing at the Queen. They're tough, man. And so it's going to be an interesting matchup. I think going to see some tight defense. Now it may be end up being one of those 40-45 type games, but at the same time, it wouldn't shock me if both scored over 60. They're just that good, man. So styles make it, man. So we're going to see which one is going to prevail.
I know our man Mitchell Weber's in the watching. Thanks for tuning in, Mitchell. I do want to give a shout out one more time to Brooklyn because, man, sure. I talked about Sydney Middleton a second ago. We're getting to watch her for all these years. Evan Polsgrove is one I've raved about in volleyball and basketball. That's going to be one that's really missed too. I mean, sure. Eric, she is, I've said it so many times because I just think that she's so underrated as not just a basketball player, multi-sport athlete, 1,000 career kills and volleyball, 1,000 career points. Mm-hmm. So you really enjoyed watching that run. But we love, I don't know if I'd necessarily call Brooklyn a Cinderella story because, I mean, we knew they were going to be good. They were really, I guess you could maybe say it was kind of that in a way just because they were banged up and then did some things that not a lot of people expected them to do. And they made it to the quarterfinal run. So a lot of fun there in Class 4A. And then let's head down to the next one in 3A that is always loads of fun. And, Eric, I think that this is probably about where for the first time in a long time, I didn't necessarily predict it this way. I did not predict Harding Academy to be, which I should have learned last year, not to sleep too much on Harding Academy. They were good this year. Don't get me wrong. Of course, shout out our man, Rusty Garner, that was there last year. He's now an assistant at Harding University who won the GAC tournament today. Also, the boys did. So shout out to those Harding Bisons. A lot of fun watching those teams. But now Ty Clothier is coaching the Lady Wildcats, and really great performances from Clare City, Emery Wilson for the Lady Wildcats to make a run there. But to me, it's been Lamar and Dover that have really been the top. I think that's been your top two for quite a while now, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. When you think about what Dover's done, the undefeated team there, and Lamar, and I know Corey Sanders is rightfully going to get a lot of that credit for Lamar, and I think it's probably one of those things that it's maybe fair to say that without her, they might not be in this position, but with her, it's not the only reason why they're doing that. If that makes sense. And I talked about last week how this is such I know she had 33 and she's going to have those games where she gets her points. But I mean, Eric, you look at, and she had a huge tournament, but Kaylee Long put up 14 against Harding Academy. Shaylee Mayfield's one that we've heard a lot over the past few years. Emma Bailey, I know, is another name that I've heard a good bit. So that's one thing with Coach Sluderman is, yes, Corey is going to get a lot of that pub. She's the point guard. I know she's battled injuries, but she started since her freshman year. So she's going to get a lot of the pub, but that's a big reason why Lamar has been what it has been. And a big part of that is just because they are such a balanced team and they're so fundamentally sound. She got help. She's pretty much every team has, that one player, okay, that's going to get theirs, but she's got a lot of help. You mentioned several other young ladies there. And the same thing with Dover. Logan Young has been their leading scorer all year, but she has help. Katie Keister is there. McCarty is there. I mean, so these are two teams that, they have – the quote unquote main attractions, but they have others that can have big games as well. You may look up, Corey may have 10, but Mayfield may have 25. Logan Young may have 8. McCarty may have 30. They've got capable teammates that can do damage, man. And like I said, these has been pretty much 1-2 all year. Maybe with the exception, maybe that the first week or so, but they pretty much been 1-2. For the most of the season, man, if not all. And again, we're going to get another state final where the two best teams in the class are playing, which is what you want to see, man. And I really think it's going to be a great one. I think Mountain View played Dover well, and that game was tight up until I think early in the fourth maybe, and Dover kind of pulled on off. Same thing with Harding Academy, man. So they were tested in the semifinal round, but we're getting the final that I think, most of us expected to see. Well, and I'll tell you too, before we head down to some to watch, and this, Eric, Mountain View, buy some stock in those Lady Yellow Jackets. Oh, man, dude, between the Coopers, between JC and Evie Cooper, JC a junior, Evie a freshman. Then you've also got the Aiken sisters. Emma, actually, congratulations, Emma just got offered from Arkansas Tech today. Got multiple offers already. She's a junior. Her sister Erin is a freshman. I mean, this Mountain View squad is going to be one to be reckoned with. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and predict dynasties or anything, but I think that's going to be another one along with these ones that we see here just about every year between, these Final Four teams. Dumas has done some really good things. I'll tell you, Eric, I was really impressed. I know that didn't go well for him in the state tournament, but I was impressed with what Jonathan Buffalo did in year one at Center Point. I know they were one of your ranked teams throughout the year. McGee had a great season. Falk, love the way that Falk plays, the 5 in, 5 out. Bergman, of course, can't forget them. And we knew that was not, and even Coach Sluterman said it, this was not your typical 1-4 matchup when you think about the recent history between these teams. So 3A is just always, we've said it, I think every time you've been on here, it's just always so incredibly loaded.
The toughest class to deal with, man, because there's so many teams in there that are right there. The parity, I mean, again, that may sound cliche, but the parity in 3A is top level, man. I mean, literally, top to bottom. Every team in the 3A tournament, man. I mean, it was tough.
Yeah, no question about it. Then heading to 2A, man, what a tournament this was. The boys was, the girls was great too, especially this last game between Barton, so the Barton Cutter game. And I want to make sure I give some flowers out to Cutter real quick here first, because Aaron Thomas did an incredible job with that team this year. And I talked about last week how this team could be really, really good if they stay out of their own way. If they just focus on playing, don't make mistakes, just focus on what you need to do. And they did that. They played exceptional after that 3-game skid, played exceptional defense, played together. I mean, it was just really fun to watch. So through the first week of February, this was a 24-1 team. They hit that 3-game skid. Of course, that included losses to MVE, Mount Vernon Nola, and Barton, which they got one. They almost got revenge on both of them. But Coach Court, you obviously we've had him at media days the last couple of years, and I know you've known him for a really long time. Just an incredible job that he has done for this community. I was talking to somebody from Barton a couple of weeks ago, or I guess actually last week, and I was talking like, okay, obviously they have more success than just about anybody in football. Same thing with track. Track, kind of the success from football bled over to track when Frank McClellan was there, and vice versa. But really, Eric, you might correct me if I'm wrong, other than the past 2 years, the basketball history, or at least recent history, is essentially non-existent with Barton. Right. Successful history, of course. Yeah. And now they're headed to the state final. And, man, what an incredible – I know that was just such a heartbreaker for Cutter, but the way that game ended, of course, they were down – Barton was down 18. Demaya Wilson hit – surprise, cuts the lead to a point. Three-pointer with about 30 seconds left, and she assisted on a Jakira Jackson bucket. I mean, the obviously everything that team has done has gone through those two ladies, and it's only fitting that they came down to and won the game the way that it happened. But just it's great to see this stuff where these towns that don't have a ton of success, particularly in a specific sport, do what they did. And that's just so great to see with Barton. And I've been really impressed with this Izard County team all year. Of course, Quitman, they were undefeated for the longest time, fell to Clinton, and then they lost their first game I guess that was the regional championship against 2A competition to Barton. And then Izard County takes care of business. So the Izard County boys and girls had a great season. So, I'll tell you, I think we're in for a whale of a game in this 2A matchup.
This was going to be good, man. I think most of us kind of figured, at least we were thinking it was going to be Barton Quitman again in the final. But Izard is one of those teams that's been good all year long. I think they've won like 22, 23 in a row or something like that. And they just quietly gone along and won games. They just go and handle business, which is what they did during the state tournament, man. Quinn Johnson, Olivia Spray, Mackenzie Yancey. I mean, they're one of these teams that have multiple players. They can put up big points. Either one of those young ladies can lead the team in scoring on the night. Barton pretty much, what you're going to get with Barton. You have to try to. You're not going to stop both of those young ladies. I mean, it's no one has stopped them this year, and that's probably not going to happen this year. You can try to hope one has an off night and slow the other down. But those two are just so tough to defend. But again, this is a team. Have just played ball. And win game, they've definitely earned their right to get here. They've played a tough schedule. They turned around and beat Quitman by 11 yesterday as well. So it's going to be a good game, man. I'm really, that's one of the ones that I'm really, really interested in seeing just how each other matches what the other is able to do.
Of course, also had another Kennedy Barrett show, particularly in the first round against Bigelow. Man, she's going to be so fun to watch over the next few years. Yes. That's going to be tons of fun. And then East Poinsett County had that really close game in the quarterfinals with Cutter and Riverside. This is so any softball fans that might be watching, you want to pay attention to this Riverside team. Because a lot of these seniors that have played basketball together have played softball, won a state championship in softball 2 years ago. So one of those classes that has just been so incredibly successful in multiple sports. But I do want to add on to Cutter and Eric. I'm not sure. I was reading Sam Lane, or Sam with the Democrat, because Sam Lane with the Democrat Gazette was covering the 2A tournament, I guess, during the quarter and semifinals. And I did not know this until I read his recap of the Cutter. I think if I'm not mistaken, it was the Cutter and East Poinsett County game. But so Aaron Thomas and two of his star players, Natalie and Danielle Babb's sisters. So Natalie and Danielle's brother was killed in a car accident. Aaron's brother was also killed in a car accident. Now, I can't remember the timelines or anything like that, but the cool thing about this was they dedicated this season to their fallen brothers. And I thought that was just, obviously in a terrible situation, terrible situations, you love to hear stories like that. And especially for them to be one of the final four teams standing. Thought that was really cool how they did that. And really, and we've talked about that with Mills. We'll mention it here in a second with Morrilton when we get to 4A boys. But that's something really cool to see, especially when a team is so successful the way they were.
Exactly, man, and they played that way. I mean, actually, they were so close to get to that final, man. If it wasn't for the Big Two for Warden late, but like I said, hats off to them. They had a great year, like you mentioned. They were lights out first half of the season, went through that little lull, and then they got it back on track, man, and came within 2 points to get to a final, man. And so they're commended for everything they did this year, for sure.
Then Class 1A, it was almost predictable, but it went about what we thought. Now, I'll tell you, I'm going to really tip my hat to Rural Special, Eric, because I think you and I both knew that they were no ordinary 4 seed coming out of the region that they did with the 2 state finalists, if that tells you anything that you need to know. So I felt like, and I mentioned last week, I felt like if any team was going to give Westside any kind of push in conference play, it was going to be Rural Special. They played 2 times in conference play, and then, of course, they played in the regional championship, and it was an average margin of victory for Westside by about 22, 23 points. But this Rebel squad, Rayleigh Turner is another one of those kids that we've watched for so long. She played phenomenal, hit the game winner in the opening round against Wonderview I say upset 4-1, but look, Rural is not I can't say that enough. They're not your standard 4. But now we get a rematch between Westside and Earl. And Earl, other than Rural the other night, was really, I guess yesterday was the only team in 1A that's really, I guess you could say pushed more. I'd like to say more so kept up. I don't know if pushed is the right word, but if any team could do it, it's certainly Earl. And we know what Journey Jefferson can do. We know what Jada Maples can do. So I think that this was the matchup that we expected. I feel like probably most people are going to pick Westside, and rightfully so, but don't sleep on those Earl Bulldogs, man. They really did give them a fight in that regional championship.
Yeah, and again, this is going to sound like a broken record, but this is pretty much what we expected to happen in this final. And one thing about Earl, usually when they get to Hot Springs, they usually win. Boys and girls, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, the boys are there too. So
the boys are there too, man. And I promise you, after they lost to Westside in the regional final, I'm pretty sure they have been kind of pointing to this game. So they're going to go in. A lot of teams don't like to use the revenge angle, and I'm sure they're going to kind of downplay that a little bit as well. But this in the back of their mind, that's what they're looking for. And this is a game that they know, and I truly believe that they know, they think they can win the game. And Westside is going to be favored for sure. They've been number 1 all year long. They've proven it. But Earl, like I said, if it's a team that's going to actually give them a push outside of Rural Special, it's going to be Earl. And it's another game that I expect another close game. The first one was a 6-7 point difference or something along those lines. It'll be another close one, man. And I wouldn't expect anything differently. I don't expect either one of these teams to beat the other by 15 or something like that. I think it's going to be a close game.
Yeah, no doubt. I agree. And our man, you saw me smirking there for a bit. Our man, Monty Patel's in the comments. We'll get to stick around, Monty. I've got some crow to eat once we get to 4A. So make sure you hang out. So we'll head on or you got something else?
No, you good. You good.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So we'll head on down to 6A here. And actually, our man, Robert, is back. So want to welcome him. Appreciate you being involved in the comments. Of course, I knew he was going to ask about his Springdale Bulldogs that we expected to be at this point. And, you know, Eric, pretty much every time I've done radio every week up until about when Kellen Robinson came back. And I know you had Jonesboro ranked at number 1. I did too. They were just on a roll, and they had a good season. Again, they made it to the semifinals, and they hung with Springdale, but just like everybody else, I mean, they just have not been able to pull away. The Bulldogs have just been incredible. Eric Burnett, really got to give him, and we're not shocked that Eric Burnett is doing a great job filling in. He's a multi-time state champion head coach, but it's no doubt that these kids have been through it in the last few weeks. But I'll tell you, I would imagine that, I don't want to speak for them, but I think this is probably their escape from all that. And just really haven't skipped a beat, frankly. So they're in the championship just kind of like we expected them to be. And then really once Bryant got healthy, if I'm not mistaken, they're undefeated since Kellen Robinson came back in a few weeks after conference play started, about a month or so, put up 19 points and really just hasn't skipped a beat in that span. So I think coming into the year, you had a feeling it was either going to be Bryant or Jonesboro out of the Central. I think everybody and their mother expected it to be Springdale, and both of these teams proved it right. And so when you talk about star-studded matchups and just going down the line of both of these rosters, I mean, just look at the scoring, especially from Bryant in that semifinal matchup against Harbor. This is just going to be an absolute slobber knocker.
It took Kellen really one game, maybe two, to get going. The first game back was ironically against Jonesboro when he had that 19 points. But that was a game they ended up, taking off in the second half, winning by 18. I think he played Central the next game, and it was 16 or so points, whatever. But since then, he's been lighting it up. He's the Kellen Robinson that we've been used to seeing since he was a freshman at Episcopal. Putting up big numbers, man. And like you mentioned, in that Brian has scores. Him, CB, RJ Newton, RJ Young. They've been rolling since he's been back, and we figured. Once he got going, if you're going to get them early, because when he's back in that lineup, it's a completely different team, completely different animal to defend. And they haven't lost since she's been back in that lineup. Like you mentioned, Springdale, we all kind of figured that they would be here. They've been doing this, all year long. I don't even know how many games they won in a row, but it's been a lot, since before the King Cotton. And so it's no surprise there. I really think this is going to be a good one as well. Springdale will likely be favored, and rightfully so. They've been at the top since Jonesboro lost to Bryant that game. But again, Bryant, they're back in the final, which is what they want to get to, man. So it's going to be a good one. I'm anticipating a good one anyway.
I'm kicking myself because I meant to put down Springdale's win record. I think the streak it's over 20 now. I think it's 23 or 24. I'll definitely have that before we tip off. But yeah, I know it's over 20. So they've just been killing it. So yeah, they have. And also too, it's one of you always hate to see, especially if you don't have a dog in the fight, a player just go off and come out on the losing end. And that was with Cortland Mulger, another one that we've watched since his freshman year, 35-point performance while also battling foul trouble. So just put the team, when we've seen him put of course, this is a team that's been really, of course, Hayden Wood is another one that we've talked about. Chris Wood's son, the football coach, longtime football coach, and now AD at Harbor. But the way that Mulger played, I mean, this was just an extremely intense matchup just because of the high caliber of players that you had in it. But 35 points and to come out on the losing end, that's just extremely tough. We've seen plenty of players who have done that, but what a career for that young man.
Heck of a career, man. I mean, he has nothing to hang his head about. That's back-to-back years. He was in the semis. He got to the finals as a sophomore at Springdale when they played Jonesboro in that I think 22, 23, whatever final that was when he saw
23,
23, whatever it was, and so nothing to hang his head about, man. He had an awesome career, and he went down fighting. That's what you want to see. If you're going to go down swinging, man, and he did that and gave it everything he had out there against Bryant, man. But like I said, Bryant, have so many weapons, man. It's tough. And they're kind of like farming. I mean, you try to take away one, but they got 3 or 4 others that can put up big numbers, man. So it's going to be one heck of a matchup, bro.
And for the second year in a row, we have another Saline County representative, the Benton Panthers, that also are lacking no shortage of studs. And Eric, we know that Terrion is going to get, and rightfully so, he's going to get he's going to get his rebounds, he's going to get his points. But Harrison, golly, man, Harrison Pickett and Elam Shelby had a really great game in the game against Marion. This is just another one that I think you go to. Javarius Russell I think that was in the quarterfinals, that he had 16, 18 points, something around there. So this is another really loaded team. And Benton, I think probably everybody had circled to be here since before the season even tipped. So it wasn't a big shock that they got to this point. On the other side, I don't think there's a lot of people that are shocked Maumelle is here, because Maumelle is talented. They went to the state final in 2021. They went to the first round, that's when Valonia played keep away against them before the shot clock. And then they lost to Greene County Tech in the semis quarters in 23, semis to Benton last year. So this is a rematch of the semis last year. I know Maumelle definitely wants this one for the way that ended, but I'll tell you, Eric, this Maumelle team, I know we've both seen a lot of them. I've said this many times. I said it on the broadcast when I called the Hot Springs game with Steve the other night. This is the most together I think I've seen a Maumelle team, because they're always talented. That's nothing they're ever lacking. But you add Jace Tillman to this mix, you add Seth Jones to this mix, and the way that Malik McGuire has been playing down there in the paint, Markalen Rochelle, what more can you say about him? Derek Lewis, that's another one that I don't know that has been talked about quite as much, because it was really in the last month or so, even though they've been winning, it was really in about the past month or so that this team really, really picked it up. And then, of course, you point to a guy coming off the bench and Kenan Johnson that was real big the other night. So I know that it's real easy to just go ahead and circle Benton as the hands down. I've seen plenty of people say it's going to be a blowout, and you know what? It might be. But I'll tell you, Maumelle has just as much right to be here, and they have proven themselves to me just as much.
Oh, for sure. It's interesting you say that the togetherness that they've shown the last 3 or 4 times that me and Shook have talked. He's literally mentioned the fact that this team is playing as together as they've been in a long time. And you can see it out there on the court. They're having fun, first of all. And they trust each other, man. And he hit on that, matter of fact, last night after the game against Catholic about how these guys love playing together. As a unit, man. And, they were kind of doubted a little bit after Lanier left and everything. And they kind of wanted to prove themselves, And like I said, bringing when Jace came over and CJ came over, man, they gave them added ammunition. But when you bring in new pieces, also, you have to kind of gel, because, if you're not gelling, then it doesn't really matter. But this team has, and you love to see something like that, man. In the Catholic game last night, Catholic plays a brand of basketball that makes it tough to defend. I've always said, even in the Nelson game, where a lot of fans were just automatically assuming that they were going to win the game. But I told a couple of guys that was sitting behind me, Catholic plays about as hard as anyone that you're going to see play. It's constant motion, which makes them tough to defend. And when they're knocking down shots, they're even tougher to defend, and Nelson found it out, of course, that buzzer beater that Josh Thursby hit.
Man, what a player. What a player.
And the same, even last night, man, against Maumelle, man, we talked about Moldrew going down swinging with Harvard. Josh did the same thing going down against Maumelle, man. Kid was just giving it his all, man. And on the other side, Benton, like I said, they've been number 1 all year in 5A. Harrison Pickett, and me and Dex talk about this quite often as well. Terrion is that guy, of course. One of the best players in the country. Harrison is that dude, and I don't even say that loosely. The kid doesn't talk much. He has the same expression from the time the ball is tipped to the time the final buzzer ends. He just plays basketball, man, and he does so much. He rarely turns it over. He's a bucket, and he plays tough defense, and that dude, you look up, he had, I think 30 yesterday. But it was the easiest 30 that you'll find. He makes the game look easy, man. And when he's on, then Benton's on, and when he's doing what he did, particularly in that second half against a good Marion team, they're almost impossible to beat. and I think, being shook again, we talked and he asked me, did I like their chances? I told him, yeah, of course. I said, but, Ben's a team that you just can't circle Terry on to try to stop. You can try to slow him down, but you got Harrison to work out. You got Elam to worry about. Anthony Spratt, which is one of the best freshmen in the country, about as athletic as a kid you're going to find as a freshman. They've got multiple weapons. Marmel as well. So I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. We may get periods of pretty good defense, but when you have that much talent on the floor, they're going to put up a bunch of points. So it's going to be a high-scoring one, man. Ben is going to be favored, I'm sure, but Marmel is going to be right there, man. And they've been itching to get back to this point, and they're alive picking this one as well.
Yeah, there was a lot of big-time performances and losing efforts in this particular tournament. You think about J.J. Andrews against Benton. Darius Folks for Sylvan Hills had a few big-time performances. Obviously, Jay Hayes that had multiple, even in the losing effort to Maumelle. Nettleton, how about Jacoby Jameson and T.J. Whitney? Really enjoy watching those young men play ball. Oliver Barr had a big day, and Valley View's lost to Hot Springs. Sloan Hayes and Lakeside's lost. I'm just thinking of these off the top of my head because they jumped out at you.
Right.
And I mean, these weren't just like, kind of like, oh, that's really good. I mean, these were big time performances and losing efforts. So also shout out to Sammy over at Marion, his first year there, a Jonesboro guy coming in. I know he gets a lot of flack for that. Great dude, man. I met him at media days for the first time. And I know you covered him as a player. That was like right as I was getting out of college that he played. So I never covered him, but great job there at Marion. Of course, Marion was in that really competitive East. They were the ones that were the favorites really coming, at least in the last couple of weeks of the season, particularly just because they won the conference. They were on a 10-game win streak coming into that game against Benton. So they were definitely the hottest. But a lot of, not surprisingly, a lot of big-time performances in that state tournament. So now we head on down to 4A. We'll go ahead and bring in our good friend Monty Patel here. So shout out to those E-STEM Mets. If you pull enough tapes, you will see that I have ended up on a hype video or two just for having to eat crow or whatever. I am clearly on here saying that it was going to be Forest City and Mills. If you look at this bracket on the screen at the bottom there in the semifinals, I said that it was going to be Mills and Forest City, and I watched every single second of the Forest City E-STEM game, and what a game plan that was from E-STEM. And Eric, I really was impressed more so with the fact is look, and I'll say this, there were more talented kids on Forest City's team. I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and say this, not any kind of shot at it, but as we see, hard work beats talent when talent does. And I'm not going to say that Forest City wasn't working hard. They didn't play a bad game. But my point is, Coach Patel and his staff, they instilled belief in these kids who are good players. I'm certainly not trying to take away from that. But this is what March Madness is all about. And I know March Madness is a college term and all those type things, but this just goes to show why we play the games. This was a 4 seed against a 1, not just a 4 seed against a 1, but a 4 seed or a 1 seed that was a top 2 4A team pretty much since the beginning of the season. So I can't say enough about what Coach Patel and Hunter Mickelson. I don't know his whole entire staff. I know a few of them. That was great. And I think this is just going to set the standard for an E-STEM program that's going to keep growing.
I guarantee you probably weren't many that thought E-STEM was going to be able to do what they did this year. Considering the last couple of years, how season has finished with them. But that goes, Monty Patel he probably doesn't get as much credit as he should get about what he's trying to do at E-STEM, the program he's building. And it's a process. I know they get that word just thrown around quite a bit when you're talking about trying to build teams, build programs, but he believes in the process. And this year has been pretty much a blueprint of what he's trying to do. Those kids over there competed every game. They never quit. They gave Mills all kinds of trouble in the games they played in conference. Same thing with Hall. Then they get to regionals and play outstanding game, beat the host team on their home floor. And then you get to state. You beat a Forest City team that had won 20-something games in a row, had been a top 2 team all year in 4A. And that game, on paper is going to be upset. But like I said, you watch the game, and I had that game pulled up as well while I was at 5A. East End belonged, and they showed that they ended up winning the game. And so hats off to what Monty has done with that program, and it's just going to get even better. And I'm literally going to say that this won't be the end for this team. But what he's got going over there, what he's got instilled in those kids, they believe. Which is as a coach, you want your kids to believe. You don't want to go into games thinking that, okay, we're not going to win because we hadn't won in forever, or they beat us this time. No, they go in thinking they can win every game. That's what you want to hear, man. And he's just done a tremendous job, him and his staff, man. So hats off to them. I'm pretty sure, me and him we talk quite a bit anyway. And I'm sure he'll be down at Hot Springs as well. But great job by him and that team, man. But again, just the finalists, everyone I think pretty much expecting either Mills or Forest City to be there. Morrilton, like you mentioned earlier, man, it's like they have something to play for. They've been good all year long, and then we got to go Keith Zachary, man, the best dressed coach in America in high school. I guarantee you that. That's my guy, man. He's a great coach, man. And those guys have come together, man, and the run that they're on, the way they've been playing, they earn that right, and they get a rematch with Mills, who's been number one all year.
And Morrilton, they've won 17 of 19 since the calendar flipped to 25. Now they lost by 12 to Mills in I think it was the 4A3 regional final, but Mills' only loss is to Benton, and the Comets have won 27 straight. So yeah, I mean, I think that was kind of where we were at, where a lot of people were at, is you had a pretty good feeling that it was, again, this is, obviously before all the chaos at the bottom of the bracket happened, not just with the East End. I didn't know with Camden, Fairview, and Ozark. I certainly had no idea with Pottsville and Nashville. That was a JC Jones hitting that shot. I think JC had like 35 points in that game. But the bottom of the bracket coming into the tournament, you felt a lot more confident about. You pointed out last week, the host team Magnolia, they had one loss and they just weren't getting a whole lot of respect, at least not compared to the Millses and the Forest Cities. Morrilton, I think, was getting a little bit more, maybe more so just because Morrilton probably played just a little bit better strength of schedule. But Blyville also had a really good year, in Mackenzie Pierce coming back to coach the Chickasaws. But Morrilton, I think too, like you said, they've been playing all year. They also played a really tough non-conference schedule. But when you think about CJ Clemens and playing for him, their fallen teammate, it's great to see these stories that obviously we're very open-minded and we stay neutral with what we do. But you do love to see these towns, these teams, these kids that have gone through tragedy succeed. And so, and also too, like you said, I mean, Raymond Cooper and Keith Zachary, I'm excited to watch those dudes. They're exceptional people, exceptionally intense too. Love to see that. So we're excited for 4A.
It's going to be a good one, man. I mean, it's a rematch from a few years ago when Pinion's senior year, these two played in the finals.
That's right. Yeah, that was 21, if I'm not mistaken. I think they beat him. So Mills split in 2020. Did they beat? Was it Morrilton they beat in 21?
It may have been. It was Pinion's senior season, if I'm not mistaken. When they played in the final, I don't know if it was 21.
Well, because I know, because I'm trying to think here too. 22, I think it was Magnolia. Yeah, because Darian Ford and Joseph played their senior years in 22, and then Darian and them ended up playing Blyville. So I think it might have been 21, either in the semis or finals. But we're we're having to dig into the memory banks here.
Oh man,
but
you're getting the numbers.
Yeah, no, I know that's right. And on down to 3A here. So we talked a lot about Logan Bailey last week, and what a job he has done in year one. And I'll tell you what, he's still a really young coach. Logan is, I think he's like early 30s. He's a little bit younger than me. But after what he did at Cabot, taking them to the semis 2 years ago that were right on. Now, Jonesboro, that was the first year Jonesboro was back in 6A, or I guess we're in 6A. And Jonesboro went and beat Springdale. But people forget in that semifinal round against Cabot had them beat. And nobody expected that. Now, I know they had a little bit more of it. They took a step back last year in his final year there. But Logan's he's becoming one of the better coaches in the state very quickly, especially with this run that they're on. Of course, not only did they win some games, and they won them handily. Of course, you look at the screen there, the first round matchup with Lincoln was tight, but then they beat up on Prescott, beat up on a really good Lamar team. Then you look at that other side. Osceola ended up making it there. So this is their first time back since 2022 when they went under Vernon Wilson and beat Dumas. But how about Elkins, Eric? That Elkins game with the Riverside finish, that was definitely one of the wilder ones of the tournament. Of course, that was in the quarterfinals, and Jackson Hallam hits what was about a 30-foot shot. He was fouled with 2 or 3/10 of a second, hit the game-winning free throw to send the Elks on to the semifinal round in a 45-44 win. So Coach Porter, Jared Porter and his guys, great job this year. A 30-6 team that probably didn't get the respect that they deserve, at least by not everybody. And then they also beat a Bergman team in the first round that Bergman really throughout the season was number one, really until like the district regional tournament time when Melbourne kind of took that next step up. So now we got a Bearcats and Seminole final. So that eastern part of the state is, we got some NEA North Central teams really well represented in the state finals here. But I think this should be a really good one too.
Again, just like the 3A girls, 3A boys are just so competitive, man. The Melbourne Lincoln game. It's not I know it's a 1-4 game on paper, but Lincoln is not your average 4 seed. Which is why that game was so close. Lincoln has been in my top 6 and probably yours too, pretty much most of the season, hovering around that top 6, 7, 8 range. So that was a good team. But I've been a believer in Melbourne. It took me one game in December to realize that this team was good. That was over at the Stanton Classic in Conway when I first watched them, got a chance to see them play. I believe it was Mills. And it was a competitive game for about 2.5 quarters until Mills really got going. But that's a credit to what Logan Bailey has done, with that team. And they made a believer out of me then, and then they've been rolling since I guess before the buzzer beater when they played Bergman. I guess it was prior to the conference tournament. I think they hit a buzzer beater or whatever it was, but they've been rolling for a while now. And then for them to beat Lamar by 36. In the semi, if I was more surprised about a final score of any of the semifinal games across the state, that was certainly the one. Of course, I'm not shocked that Melbourne won that game because they're good, just like Lamar's good. But the point spread, when I saw that final, I literally, my mouth dropped. I was like, wow, and that's kind of scary with what that team could do, man. But Osceola has been good all year long. That program has been solid for a while. So I'm definitely not shocked about seeing them right there. They've been in my top 5, top 6 all year as well. So that's going to be a good game, man.
Appreciate Taurus Hayes. My apologies if I pronounce your name wrong. I'm very known for doing that, but appreciate you getting involved here. And talks about Osceola being the best defensive team in 3A. And it's funny that he says, or coincidental that he says, because I was going to talk about their defense. And you look at just the scores there, and you see that Coach Basemore had a lot of expectations. He took over a defending state champion that lost the Dalen Loves. They lost a good bit from that 22 class and has done a really good job. I don't know if I'd necessarily say rebuilding, I guess restocking, reloading, whatever word you want to use, but their defense has definitely been ferocious. So I'm glad that got brought up.
Sure. And I think that's going to be the key, I think, in that game, man. They can continue to do what they've been done, which is hound, opposing guards in particular. It's going to get interesting, man, for sure.
The down to 2A. So, man, don't ever count out those EPC Warriors. I think we touched on them briefly, Eric, last week. They were coming in as a 4 seed. And no lie, in the back of my mind, I'm like, man, I probably should have – after we got done recording last week, I was like, I probably should have talked more about them. And honestly, we probably should have talked more about Tuckerman too, because Tuckerman has been one of those that over the past – so 2 years ago, they weren't that good. They were just a little bit – they weren't bad. They were a little over 500, but certainly not a state title contender. Then last season, you kind of started to, I really felt like you started to see some improvement. And look, when you've got Amari Neal on your team, a nationally ranked prospect, we've been talking about him since 9th grade, just an exceptional player. You've got a chance to really do something, especially once you get some things built around you. And 37 points in the semifinal. He just completely took over, but they've got some help around him. I know they've got a few sophomores that they really like. That's obviously really big. So Zeke Church and Jordan Watson, I know that are some that they've relied on. But when you've got a kid like, I think that we're probably seeing the best of Amari Neal at the right time. Again, we've known how talented and skilled he is since he was in 9th grade. But I think that we're really seeing that on the big stage. Obviously, now that they're going to be on statewide TV, we're seeing that on the big stage, and he just straight up took over the other night. We'll talk about Tuckerman and then get into East Poinsett County.
Man, it was a situation where it was prime example of a kid that's not going to let his team lose. You know, he's been had big games all year long, and you know they have lows where they will lose a few in a row and then win a few. But when they needed to win the game yesterday, they looked to that kid. You know, and he's one of these kids where it's almost impossible to root against. You know, with what he's done, his story. And just simple fact that he's a great kid and just great at basketball in general, you know. And I think a lot of people who don't, you know, really know about him, you know, saw, at least those that saw yesterday against Izzard, how good he is, how skilled he is. He put that on display, man, and he would not let Tuckerman lose that game. You know, and as good as Izzard has been all year long, he wasn't going to let Tuckerman lose that game at all, man. And shout out to him, and he deserves this. I mean, he really does, man, because he's been a special kid, you know, for a long time as far as, you know, being able to do what he's been doing out on that basketball floor. Man, he's just a great kid.
And this was, I touched on it when we were talking about 2A girls. I mean, this was probably the most thrilling tournament of all. When you think about just in the first round, Fordyce and Mount Vernon and Enola was awesome. Then you had the incredible, I know that it was obviously a big time stinger for England, but you had that incredible quarterfinal finish that between England and ICC. Man, I mean, you know, just the back and forth. I mean, that's one that you just hate to see someone come up on the losing end there. Think about that game. And then, of course, then just up to last night when you had EPC and Cedar Ridge. Now, we talked about it with 2A that you kind of had a feeling that the state champion was likely going to come out of that 2A2 region. That's kind of what we felt like coming, just because it was so incredibly competitive. We talked a lot about Cedar Ridge, and also too, and I had gone on here and I had some people kind of giving me some flack from last week when I said I think that England's on a mission and they didn't get past the second or the quarterfinal round. But to me, that doesn't. I mean, anybody could have won that game. I still think that England was definitely on a mission. They just came up on the losing end. But then we also talked about the depth that 2A2 region had when you think about Izzard County, when you think about Cedar Ridge. Obviously, both of them came out on the losing end of tough matchups, especially the way that Cedar Ridge, man, I mean, to lose in the way that Cedar Ridge did, that's essentially the way the ICC girls, the Cutter girls lost to Barton. It was one of those where Jacob Gaines, I think, or was it Jacob Gaines that hit the shot with, he hit the game. What ended up being I couldn't remember if it was him or Tyrus Real, but he ended up what ended up being the game-winning shot for EPC. And EPC is just a perfect example of just the amount of kids that succeed. We were talking about this with the Riverside girls. I swear, Eric, anytime I look at an EPC team, I see a Real, I see a Gaines. And that's just, I mean, I'm sure that these kids, I know obviously Jacob Gaines and his brother that graduated a few years ago, that was that outstanding running back. But Dennis, I couldn't think of his name, Dennis Gaines. But man, last year EPC kind of snuck up on some people. You think about their record; they were around 500 at the end of January of 2024. They got hot. They won their regional, won state. This year was a little bit of the opposite. They had a good season. They hit a skid in regionals, came out as the 4 seed, and it didn't matter. So, I mean, this is just, Coach Thaxton, man, what an incredible, really 2 Coach of the Year campaigns, really, if you ask me, back to back with what he's done with that team, and especially to do it against the slate that you did it against.
Exactly, man. You just hit it on the head, man. That region in general, it was a monster, and when you got these 2 teams coming out, that says a lot, And I think EPC is a defending state champ that probably, if this makes sense, flew on a lot of people's radar. And that's probably not fair to them because they earned it.
And they were a 4 seed, so just to the average fan, it makes sense, I guess.
And a 4 seed as a defending state champ, and now they're back where they were last year. And it's one of these teams where I guarantee you, no one wanted to see them in the first round. Ozark Catholic, who had a great year, by the way. Just happened to see them in the first round. And it's not shocking at all to see this team back, where they are, man, which I think makes for a really intriguing state final. when you have a defending champ playing a team like Tuckerman, led by a kid that's been special in his entire career. And he's going to get a chance to finish it off on the biggest of stages, man. I think that makes for great theater for that game, man.
Well, and there's so many great, and we touched on it a good bit last week, but there's so many great teams that are not going to be in Hot Springs. You think about Enter County with Gabe Spray, Cash Arnhart, Cedar Ridge with Kyle Provence, and of course, Ryland Brown. Those guys, man, just an incredible season from all of them. I was really impressed with Mariana. I think Coach Wilson really, he wanted to get to that state tournament so bad this year, just because he came from that 2022 state championship team at Osceola. They missed out on, actually, I think it was EPC that ended their season last year in the regionals that kept them from going to state. So I was really happy for Coach Wilson and the Trojans to there, not only to get to state, but to win over a really good Poen team, a 4-over-1 over a really good Poen team. So we knew that this 2A tournament was going to be really good for both the boys and the girls, and it certainly turned out that way. And then last but not least, Class 1A. So Earl versus Mark Tree is going to be the final there, and not shocking here, Eric, two NEA teams that we knew were going to be absolutely loaded coming into this year. I'll tell you some squads that really impressed me throughout this. Crowley's Ridge was really good. Talon McMillan was a great player for them. Columbia Christian is definitely one of those schools that this is the first year that they are sanctioned by the AAA, so they're still not very well known. They're in the Magnolia. I think they're actually in Magnolia down in South Arkansas area. They played really well. Zakiya Smith and Cooper Goodwin had a great tournament. Also, Ridgefield Christian at Evan Illenberg had a great tournament as well from the time that they were in there until the quarterfinals. So a couple of really good matches, a couple of surprising teams that I did not expect. I did not expect County Line to get bounced in the first round. That was a little bit of a shocker for me. Also, too, I meant to mention this in the girls. Shout out Rod Briggs, the job he did at Lafayette County, with both the girls and the boys. That was a great job there. Both of them won a state tournament round. Actually, did the girls – I don't want to go back to the bracket. I think the girls made it to the quarterfinals as well, but both at least won a playoff game. So really good job there from Coach Briggs. But it is going to be the defending champion, Mark Tree. Of course, Mark Tree, this is their third year, came up short in a heartbreaking loss in 2023 to County Line when County Line went 45-0 against an Earl Bulldogs team, Eric, that I know that they played obviously in that tough region as well, took some lumps there and ended up coming in as the 3 seed, probably the best 3 seed that you could think of. Exactly. But Teron Hurst, Derek, I mean, man, this team is just so incredibly loaded, and this is going to be another slobber knocker matchup.
The two teams that we probably both figured would be in the final, and you look back at the semifinal, 3 of those teams were from the 1A3 district, which again is the toughest, in 1A, I think by far this past season. When you look at Earl, Mark Tree, and Crowley's Ridge, man, and Ridgefield Christian was good as well, really good as well. But yeah, this is two teams that I guarantee you they both probably thought they would be at this point early in the year. If you were to ask them, and it's going to be a great game, man. This is either is it the fourth time? Third?
I think it's actually the second because they lost I've actually got it right here. So Earl beat them on January 24th, 53-39. Then Mark Tree won the February 28th matchup, 48-42. They actually didn't play in district because because of the loss. I can't remember how it all turned out, but this is their third time. You would think that they played 3 or 4, but this will be their third time.
Yeah. And either way, I guarantee you that it's going. Their fans are come for this one. They probably been had this one circled ever since the end of regions or whatnot. It's going to be a great game. I mean, like I said, when you got two teams that know quite a bit about each other from that same area of the state, all games they played have been tight ones, and I don't expect anything different in this one, man. Both teams are loaded, and then they're starting lineups, and then they got guys come off the bench. They gives them a lot of production, man. So it's going to be one of those games. I hate to say toss-up type game, but I mean it is what it is. I mean these teams know a lot about each other, man. It's going to be a close game.
Well, I'll tell you, Eric, I think that this could be. And I also, Matt, too, wanted to give a shout out to Blevins. Blevins had a really good season. Kind of was in that battle with Nevada for their conference, and I think they split, if I'm not mistaken. So Nevada, of course, was the state runner up last year, but Blevins made a really impressive run to the semifinal round as well. But the most like attended 1A boys game that I can think of within recent was Bradley a few years ago when when Benny famously said, you might want to, if you want to rob Bradley, if you want to rob our school district, now is the time to do it. Because guys, of course, Coach Benny, he's been there for over 40 years at this point. So he had kids that he coached in the 90s. I've Clifford Moore, good friend of mine, who went there in the early 2000s, and his daughter Ainsley was a really good softball and basketball player, graduated last year, now playing softball at Tech. He's got all kinds. He's like, man, he's coached all my cousins, he's coached all my siblings. I mean, pretty much my whole family. But that was about as well of attended of a 1A game that I could think of in recent memory, and I think that this could definitely rival that. Just because not only because you got two NEA teams where I say all the time, prep basketball in Arkansas is just different in NEA, but you've got two small school teams that love basketball and love to beat each other.
Those areas are going to be fairly empty. I guarantee you, because I think that game is Saturday? Is it Saturday night? I think. Yes.
So 1A is last. So it'll be the last. It'll be basically the last game of the 2024-25 season.
And it's going to be. It may not be capacity, but it's going to be quite a few there, man. And it's going to be. It'll probably be one of the better games that we see over the 3-day stretch down there in Hot Springs.
Yeah. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So. Well, Eric, again, man, really appreciate you hopping on. And I know that you were always so gracious with your time, but I almost felt bad asking you to do this because, you were just, man, you were grinding. So we were all working hard this week, but other than calling that Maumelle game, I was doing it too, but I was doing it from the comfort of my own home. So my bed was right there after that's kind of what I did is I would wake up, do the chores I needed to do, and then I would watch games. And man, once that last game was over and I typed up my reports, I was out like sauerkraut. So, man, appreciate you. Appreciate Kayla Fletcher. Everybody that was involved in hosting state tournaments is not for the faint at heart. We had six great sites where, of course, 1A was Mark Tree at Truman, 2A Cedar Ridge, 3A was at Valley Springs at North Ark, 4A at Magnolia, of course, 5A at Greene County Tech, and 6A at Springdale. So we thank everybody. It doesn't matter if you were filling up water bottles, whatever you were doing. It takes a village to really to make sure all those succeed. So, are you going to be in Hot Springs all 3 days?
Yeah, I've been there all 3 days,
okay,
man. From the start, until the finish, man. At this time of year, man, it's we're going to have a lot of good games down there, man. I always look forward to it. It's a grind for sure.
Yeah. Oh, it is. It's a grind. Of course, that's always the time where us media folk really kind of, I think football, basketball, and then the weekend of champions is where we all kind of congregate because we always talk to each other, but we don't see each other much. Right. So, it's always fun to see everybody there. And if somebody's watching and you see us there on Press Row, say hey to us. We'd love to talk with you. Appreciate everybody that got involved. And then let me make sure I touch. Let's see here. Oh, of course, Trip Keeter wants to give me a little bit of flack. Okay. Hey, great call, by the way, Trip. Do a great job on the Mill Sports Network this week. Kim Caraway, thank you for getting involved. Go Cat. I imagine from the way that it's spelt, and I don't think we have any other Bearcats other than Melbourne, but definitely not spelt that way. So
that way. You got Boonville, but Boonville is spelled with the C.
Right. Yeah, the CATS. That's something that's always thought. Man, I can't tell you how many times when I first started getting in, or when I first got into this industry, I spelt Bearcats wrong, and that was one of the ones that I heard about. So love our folks in Melbourne. So but definitely make sure, as I said at the opening, subscribe if you like what you heard. Of course, we'll wrap up basketball, and then we'll get into our baseball and softball coverage that we have for the remainder of the school year. Of course, you can subscribe on YouTube, hit that notification bell so you're alerted when we release an episode. Also, iHeart, Spotify, and Apple, we are there. So, Eric, I will see you in Hot Springs, my man. Enjoyed it as always. Again, thank all of you for tuning in. Thank everybody that got involved. We got a good bit here in the comments section, so appreciate everybody getting involved there, and we will see everybody in Hot Springs. Good luck to all the teams as we wrap up the 2024-25 basketball season. We will see you next week.